So in this video, we are showing how we built a dining table that was designed, I say most likely by AI. And here you can see the final solution that we came up with after about 5 months of continuous failing. We tried to steam wood, cut wood to thinner layers, glue them up, laminate them, but it was continuously just springy. So when somebody would, cut a steak, the whole table would be just moving. You could see here that the core of the table is made of bendy ply that we glued up. The idea came from the LVL beams that it's also laminated. So we tried this method and we used probably about 12 or 13 gallons of glue on all together, gluing up this table. And you could see the curved piece over here. This is one end. This is just a rough structure of the table. And the other side will also, as you can see here, bent. And then the inside, on the bottom, you could see an 8/4 ash. That's what's going to connect the two piece. And here you could see I am CNC routing the connection surface here. It's basically laminated with a lap glued up method. It became very, very strong. We sat on it, two of us, about 450 pounds, and it didn't give. It was very easy to sit and not have any motion in the table. After we finished this CNC work, we cut the curved parts to the length that we needed to. This will be extended. You will see on the final picture. It's actually having a base on the bottom that we glued up as well. And we are figuring out as we go on what would be the best method to cut these. And we really had to think about it. There was no particular plan, more just bigger bullet points on how we're gonna accomplish this. We ran into problems along the way because of the shape of it. And we're cutting the other half here, you could see. And this will be also cut down a little bit more on the long side. And because of the awkward shape of it, we had to come up with different jigs and various ways to hold it. Here you can see Josh cutting the rough angle on the ends. That was part of the design, but this is just rough cutting it. So you could see that we just cut with a jigsaw, and now we're just sanding it somewhat flat so the wood doesn't continue to chip. You will see later in the video where we're using routers to find this particular cut. It was actually made even smaller, but here we're just taking the main meat off, so we have a better look and idea of how this is gonna come out when we finished. So the next phase was to take the curved pieces, and we are counter milling the ends that will fit into the ash connector that we milled earlier on the video that you could see. And it took a lot of precision to figure out how we're gonna glue this up. We had to put the screws in the right spot and align it properly on the CNC machine. It's kind of an awkward piece. So here you can see the CNC machine going back and forth and cutting the counter piece out for the connector that we actually made. This was quite a lengthy process, so we try to speed this up for you. As I mentioned earlier, we tried 4 or 5 different methods on how to bend the wood. One of the criterias were that on the design had a real thick, beefy spine on the bottom of the table on the curves, and the client did not like that and asked us to eliminate that. But essentially, that's what was holding up the entire table and hold the shape of the table firm. And by eliminating that, created a new problem that we had to solve. So a lot of the actions that you see here with the connecting with the ash, you could see here the glue is going on. We used a lot of glue because the bendy ply is a pretty porous material. So we really wanted to saturate this with a good amount of glue so it stays really firm for a longer period of time. And we are basically gluing up the other half that's on the curved part. And you could see here, we're about to just connect it, and you can see the connection right there. Now, after we finished gluing these up, we put another layer of bendy ply on the entire thing, which basically just another layer of lamination. And we had to clamp it real good, real strong, so it's a nice and firm connection. We did have to calculate a lot of thicknesses and how the machine was going to cut. Everything was milled upside down, so we had to think with that. It's a reverse thinking, and we did make a mistake earlier, which we fixed fairly easily by just remaking a piece. But here you see that the clamping is an important part of it to make sure that we have a very strong and fused connection. On these black lines that you see there is the final shape of the table. So those are just vinyl edge banding to show where it is. Here you can see us gluing up the next layer, which I told you about earlier. You could see all the glue that we used. It was pretty intense, the amount of glue we put on this piece. It was a very heavy table. It took several of us about 10 of us to bring it up by hand to the second floor. But the good clamping and and weighting things down created a really strong bonding between these layers. You could see a lot of clamp goes onto these pieces. The next phase was quite intense. I ended up kerfing the lumber that we skinned the entire table with. It was a lot of cutting, hours and hours, actually days of cutting. Every piece had to be cut like that, and then we steamed it. So you could see here we're fitting the piece on the top and spray it with a lot of water. A lot of water went into this as well. We soaked the wood for quite some time. We put some paper towels on it and rags, and we frequently sprayed them with water so the wood was completely saturated with the water. So when we start steaming it, we actually just used an iron. That's a rag. We find out that the rag was easier to steam than paper towels. And you could see here, it's getting steamed, and then we'll bend it down and let it sit like that for some time, a couple hours actually, to make sure that it's bent. And it was a very long process. Every single piece that you see was made like that, and the soaking process was several hours on each side. And then the clamping process was sometimes just overnight to keep that shape, and the wood basically dried that way. And this way we were able to make it so the wood wasn't cracking or breaking when we bent the actual mold onto that mold, because the core really, the role of the core is really to be a mold and a structure under the final finish, which you see here putting on and making it pretty soaking wet, and then keep steaming it. And the steam does incredible effects with the wood. It was quite interesting to learn all these. And each side had to be done. What you see here, a lot of spray bottles, a lot of water, a lot of squeezing. And once we soaked everything, we applied the steam, and then we clamped it down. As you could see earlier, we had to make these little blocks of ash wood that helped us clamping to the edge. And then we did a different method in the center, where we just screwed straight into the substrate, which was quite sufficient. The clamping had to be very strong and precise. You could see the glue that we're putting on now on the first one. It was much easier to bend it once it took the shape, even though it springed up a little bit. You could see that it just went straight down without really doing anything to it. And then we'll be putting on the next piece right next to it, where you could see here I'm just doing the kerfing. On the kerfing, we allowed about 1/8 of an inch, some cases 3/16 of an inch of remaining material after the kerfing, which gave us enough meat that we were able to make it soaking wet and clamping it and, you know, gluing it down. And you could see here again, putting paper towels on and soaking it. This continued like that for several hours. And each piece was put on what you see here. We just clamped it to side, and ended up bending it down. You could see the steaming process here. I don't think we could put more clamps on this. And also we put ratchet straps. Which ratchet straps very useful because it helps you to squeeze the wood all the way down evenly. Wish I would have used a little wider ratchet strap. It would have been an easier way of doing it, but we learned as we moved along. So you could see me clearing it up now and getting it ready for the next piece to go on. And now I'm laying out the blocks, and these blocks will be basically screwed into the substrate and the core, and then that helps us to squeeze the piece down onto the mold or the core, and that way it takes that shape after it finished drying. We usually, before we left for home, we soaked the rags with water, and then we just left it like that for overnight. You could see it's a little firm still here, so we had to, some cases we had to soak them a little longer. It really depended on the pieces. And now we've finished the actual skinning of it. And here I'm just basically filling any smaller cracks and crevices with a wood putty. And in some cases we had to make little cuts just to make it a better fit. And it was a very lengthy process to fill everything, so the surface was basically perfect. And then we sanded it down. It was really good that we left as much meat as possible when we did the kerfing, because it gave us a good base to work with, so we didn't have any sand throughs. And you could see me here sanding it pretty deep, as much as I could see, because the table was so heavy. We wanted to get everything done from one position, and then when we were done with this side, then we had to go and get the underside done. Here I'm putting in some mold, which basically it's a jig that we build for a router, and this process was very, very stressful and very difficult. We made a couple of mistakes on this, which was easily handled. We gave enough room for mistakes, and we used routers to flush trim route the edges so it came out nice and clean. And we ended up gluing pieces on the sides after that, solid pieces of lumber, so it looked like one piece. It was a very dirty, very stressful and tedious process. We had to use several routers to do this, and we literally figured it as we went. And you probably will see some tool changes along the line here. I think we might even used a sawzall to cut the main meat off of this, and or even a pull saw that you can see on the side there. But we wanted the route to the very top, so we had a nice clean edge, because the inside didn't really matter, because that was covered up with some thick side piece like a trim that we put on the edge, and this way the edges came out nice and clean. here you can see the kerfing and how that was glued to the core. Now, one thing that we noticed is that when we were cutting with a router, the kerfing part itself was kind of blowing out on us when we did it with a router. So we had to cut it with a sawzall here, rough cut it, and then fine cut it with the router. But even on the fine cutting, we left like 1/8 of an inch to finish cutting, and it was still blowing out. So we had to fill all that with some wood fillers, so we had a solid core. Some of these were the real tricky parts where we had to hold a router on a curved piece straight. And earlier you saw some sparks there because we also put screws into this, so it kept that shape while it was gluing up. And we did not took all the screws out, so that's why you saw a big sparking there, because the router bit hit that screw. And which is okay. They're pretty sharp, and we had plenty of router bits, so it was a calculated risk. Once we were done with the routing, we did the bottom. You could see here, we did some preparations, and we had to sand it, fill any holes, and we connecting the top that's acted as the feet of the table. You could see it on the top. It was an added piece out of some thicker lumber, and it was dominoed in. And then once we dominoed it in, you could see there, we actually glued the hell out of it, just like we did on the top. and it became a very, very strong piece. And then once these were glued up, we used a very strong spray glue, and the bottom, the inside curve was actually veneered, and that was a pretty tedious process. It came out absolutely perfect. Once we did it, we went through about 6 cans of glue, and just shifting the camera so you could see it a little better. We did a couple of layers, and it's a pretty good rule of thumb to spray, even if you do contact cement. We had a wood on veneer on wood, not veneer on paperback, but we like to spray 2 coats of layers, and that way we have a very, very strong bonding between the 2 pieces. And we sprayed both. We sprayed the veneer and we sprayed the substrate that we glued on a couple of times. It's pretty messy, so gave enough space if you do anything like that so things don't get sprayed. This glue goes onto things, and the only way you can get them off is lacquer thinner. But it's a great product, and it's very easy to use, and it's good as contact cement. So we just testing these over here. You could see we sprayed it on real good. Once the glue is dry to touch, then it's pretty much ready to go. The one thing that is very important is that you kind of make a plan before you actually roll out the veneer. And we both went over it, how we're gonna do it, so we both knew what was our function in laying the veneer on. If you don't have a plan or you don't have an agreement, it could get really hectic and confusing. And once you put the veneer on top of the substrate, it does not come off. So you don't have much work time with this. You really have to just organize this. You could see us putting the veneer on here. It was a little awkward because of the shape of it, but we left enough veneer on both sides that we had plenty to work with. And we smoothing it on by hand. You could see that, and then we went all the way up, and we ended up using a roller to press down on it real good. But even just what we did by hand, it came out absolutely perfect. There was no bubbles or anything, and we were very happy about that. But again, it's 80% preparations, 20% success. So you see a lot of trimming that we do here. We actually left several inches of extra material on this because we knew we will have to come to a point where we have to keep trimming each phase separately. And that was a really good plan. It was very helpful to make the table and have perfect edges. But again, we just really thought ahead of schedule, and we run down the process in our mind, and we discussed it, how we're gonna do the next phase, and that way we didn't run into too much unknowns that was uncomfortable to fix. This part here was the most stressful one, where I had to flush trim out from the backside, and I had to do it curved. It was very, very messy, hard to see, despite I had mask on and facial protection. And you could see here with the router, I'm cutting. Even with that, I made a couple of smaller mistakes. That wasn't fatal, but it was fixable. But it's still, when you do this, it's pretty important to see where your bearing goes. And there was not much room, even with we left all these extra materials. There wasn't much room to work with to get a perfect edge, a perfect cut. So I really had to do it in smaller sections, and not just trying to do the entire thing at once. It was very important to find a position that was comfortable and stable enough. That was one of the most challenging things because of the shape. But I found some, and I just had to kind of go with the flow and just be okay with getting covered with this sawdust. So that way we got pretty nice edges all along. The next phase was we putting the edges on, which was pretty cool, pretty challenging, still challenging because the shape was a little bit awkward, not your everyday surface that you had to basically put the trim on, and things came out pretty nice. And we tried various sizes, various thicknesses, and luckily we have a bandsaw, so we were able to make different test pieces. And when you see me running out of the pictures, usually when I run for the bandsaw or pick up another piece, I had to mark the curve of it, and then cut it on the bandsaw. And once the bandsaw was cut, then we basically just glued it on and pinned it on. We did the final sanding, and here you could see we brought it in to the spray booth, and it was pretty intense. It was a 12-foot table from end to end, and we're doing the staining here on the bottom, which again we had to make a really good plan for it, because the staining is also could be a process where you really mess something up, and we needed to stain everything we could stain from one position because the table was so heavy, and we left it like this pretty much for the entire process until we completely finished the bottom. And after we stained it a couple of times, we sprayed it, so you could see it's even an awkward piece to spray because of the curve of it, and I had to keep the spray gun in a certain position so there was fluid going through it even when it was upside down. I sprayed this table with Emil Campbell Crystal Doll conversion varnish. It's a post-catalyzed conversion varnish, and it's a doll sheen. It looks shiny when you spray it on, but once it's dried, it's like sheen 5 at most. And once we put about 4 coats of finish on all the underneath surfaces, and on the top we did it a little bit different. Once we were done with the underside, we flipped it back up, and now the preparation of the top that you could see here, the final preparations, a lot of filling, more filling, sanding, grain raising, and more sanding. We sand this up to a 220 grit. Usually when you sand up lumber to 220, you don't have so much grain raise when you do the staining and the spraying process. Here you could see we had to flip it over one more time for something that we had to do on the bottom, and it took 3 of us to flip it. It was okay, but it was a pretty heavy piece. Now you could see the staining process of the top. It came out really nice, and we stained it a couple of times to get our desired tone, and then putting the seal coat on. Now we did this a little differently because we wanted to have a seal coat on top. Usually when you put a seal coat on, it's a better bonding, even though the crystal dull is a self-sealing product, but you can use a vinyl sealer, and that way it makes it somewhat stronger for over time. And because of the somewhat overspray on spraying the top, I had to spray the curved parts here, and I actually was a little bit more comfortable with spraying it this way because I didn't think when we sprayed it from upside down it had a really good even coat on it, so I decided to respray the curved part of it here, where I was able to have a better position and guide my spray gun a little better than having it upside down. And here you can see how it looks, which was pretty cool sheen on it. And then what I did, I sanded the entire top and sides with 320. This basically takes down like a very small layer, and when you spray the final coat on the top becomes like a glass quality finish. And I recommend leaving the finish drying overnight or sometime even longer, and that way you know it's fully dry. And here you could see me spraying another coat of finish, which was almost the final coat. I think I sprayed another one after this, but it was very, very smooth. And then the next phase was to get it all bundled, wrapped up. We used a lot of blankets and shrink wrap to protect it, and then took us 4 of us to basically get it in the truck, and then we transported it to Sarasota to its final destination. And here we had to bring it up there. You could see on the stairs, it took a little thinking on how we were going to accomplish that. We had to call several guys over. I think it took about 10 to 12 guys to carry it up the stairs. Luckily the stairs were wide enough to make that turn on the sideways, and you could see it here. We brought it in, and then we set it in place. We put felt pads on the bottom to protect the floor. Then here's the table. It came out really nice. They had a beautiful chandelier from Czech Republic, custom made for this space, and you could see the different colors